So Blender has been known as the jack of all trades, master of none, and there's a lot of little holes in this software that really hang you up when it comes to creating content. And one of those features is grouping. So this video, we're going to check out a grouping extension or add-on, and I'll show you how to use that here. Now, it's unfortunate it's not in vanilla Blender, but maybe the devs one day will actually include it. It would be quite nice. So getting started here, we're just going to go to preferences, get extensions. We want to enable online access if we haven't already, and you're going to look for quick groups. Okay, say quick groups instances like so. Install it, save your preferences. The way this is going to work is it's actually quite simple. You have your object that you're going to be working on, whatever the case may be. Let me get rid of these real quick, and you could use that, but I'm going to use a plane real quick. And I'm going to just start modeling a little bit of a modular kit, basically. So I'm just going to start working out onto the grid here. So pressing GY, holding control in edit mode, mind you. So tab into edit mode. And I'm just going to start working out an idea of something like a scene that we want to create. Okay. So you might have like a little bit of a floor, a little bit of a wall. You might end up doing a catwalk later on and all kinds of other fun stuff, right? And so you want to create a more complex piece, like a tunnel piece or something like that. A lot of times it's made up of very many individual assets. And a lot of times this can be done in game engines as well, if you're going to game engines. So you don't always have to do this in Blender. But the main thing is that we start doing that number. Maybe we want some kind of beam. So I'm going to press G, Y, and I scale it to SY. Scale it. Maybe we want some kind of like beam here at the top. I want to stick it up here. Okay. You can see I can't see what I'm doing very well in the side orthographic views. You can hold Alt while orbiting. What you want to do is enable wireframe. So that way you can at least see the wires, right? And so we can start constructing out these modular pieces or props or even more detailed things at some point and start grouping things together and creating little instances so that way we can actually work it all out basically. But I want to keep it relatively simple here where we're not doing too much. I just want to create some basic ideas of things. And this is kind of how you establish the footprint for your modular pieces anyways. It's a technique you can utilize at least. I want to make sure that's right where it's on it. Oh, those are not on the grid. That's why that will not. Yeah, we can fix that. Alt Z it. A little bit of modeling here. It's not a modeling video necessarily, but we can make all kinds of fun little interesting parts and pieces and start making something like this come together basically, right? So this is the main idea. Maybe we want to have like a little interest for this going together. Maybe it's like the interior of a ship or something, who knows? And so I just want to get something sufficiently complex enough to put together at least that we can start playing around with this this setup here. So well, we're going to group it together and then you'll see how this starts to work out. Okay. So we got like a wall, this piece, that piece. This is going to go up. There's going to be another one, or we could probably keep working this one even, where it's going to come up in this direction. Okay. We'll do all this up to here, here, send it over. We'll send it out to this area here. This, I guess we could maybe bring lower for now. And we'll start working this kind of stuff out, basically. I want this to be solid, and I'm going to show you why here in just a second. But basically, maybe this is the floor piece, so we can separate it. Separate the selection. And this might be the ceiling section. And so if I ever did something later on, like I add a solidify modifier to this, it'll split there now at least, right? It won't be one solid piece going all the way through. Something we could do. I want to just extrude this though out to the side. In this piece up here, maybe, I could continue it over here a little bit, something like that. Maybe I just extrude it up. And then the floor piece, like we could try pushing it down, or maybe we could push it up as well. It's really up to you here on what you're going to do for the modular aspect, right? I think I would do something closer to this, but now we got this little gap. Normally I would just swing this up like this and line these with vertex snapping, but it might work, it might not, depending. I don't think I want to do that. So instead, this section here, we could actually just pull it through And what that does is you can see in X-ray, it looks a little bit different, but we had backface culling on. We want to be careful that we have things facing the right directions with normals. So Alt N, flip. Alt N, flip. And you want to make sure your scale is not inverted, so there's no negative numbers here. Okay. If it's negative, it'll have issues with snapping later on. So you want to make sure it's all correct before we go any further. I'd say this is pretty good. So like if we did a scale here in object mode, you can see S and Z, S and Shift Z. It's now non-uniform scale. It might invert if you took it all the way over, for example. You'll have negative. And if you control and apply a scale like that, might get it. Oh, it does flip the normals automatically now, right? So you can see normally it would do this in older versions of Blender. Now it'll flip it in object mode at least. In edit mode, it still won't do that though. But nonetheless, we're getting there. We're getting these little objects put together, which is nice. So we can start planning out what we're trying to create here, make something rather interesting as far as like modularity goes, which is now. So yeah, we could definitely clean it up, make it nicer or whatever, but we'll start with these basic blocky kind of shapes. And the idea is we want to send these into a group or make them into a group anyways. And so all we're going to do here for this one is we want to pay attention to where our pivot point would be. In our case, I'm going to leave it here on this object where the origin point is, that little orange dot. If you have to adjust this, there's, of course, you always do Shift S, cursor to selected, go back to object mode. You do that in edit mode, by the way. Set origin to the 3D cursor. You can always do something like that. I'm going to Control Z back so it goes back there. But you can also hit Control period, and you can use this to move it around. So Control period will turn that on. Control period turns it off. And you can also use snapping, say vertex snapping or face snapping, to move it around and snap it around. So you hold Control if you don't turn the magnet on. Otherwise, it'll snap automatically, right? But you can snap it like that as well. Control period, it would be over there. Now, let me go ahead and just Control Z back so that we don't mess that up. The main thing here, though, is that we'll turn snapping off. Control period. We're looking for Z to be pointed in the direction of up or away from a surface. Okay, so in some cases, like this object here, if we were ever to go lay this at, or maybe not this one exactly, let's use a cylinder for an example. I'm going to create a cylinder here. Okay, and Control period real quick. If we rotate this like this, and we hit Control period, you see how Z points out? Okay, this is kind of a critical thing because what's going to happen later on is we're going to use snapping possibly, and we might use face snapping with align rotation to target. So if we hit G and we hold Control, it's going to start snapping like this. Oh, we might use center as well. Okay, and G, hold Control, and you'll see it does this number now. So no matter where we're at, that's how you get that behavior. But that Z axis is important in this case. And sometimes the other axes can be as well. And you'll have to toggle between face and vertex. And sometimes you don't want to align rotation and all that too, because it does weird things. So this is where Machine Tools add-on definitely comes into play because it's got some presets for you to use it. You don't have to come up here and tweak this all the time. Blender's snappiness, yeah, it does do that. So if we do vertex and we hit G and Z and hold Control, oh, what we got going on here? Line rotation still on. G, Z, hold Control, boom, there. So we can make little pieces or whatever we want, details later on perhaps, but you can just block them out for now and detail them up later. Okay. And that way, this might be a detail that we use later on. We might use it in this as well. It's really up to us to decide if we're going to do that. You kind of have to do this in sort of a strange way in Blender because in the other software packages, grouping's native. It behaves exactly the way you want. In Blender, it's still going to use more or less collection instances, which is the only way of creating a group in Blender per se. But we'll play around with that here in just a second. It's just that it's a little bit more of like not as it's a little less forgiving in Blender. Okay, just put it that way. So a lot of times, like in other software, you can just group something, you can open it, you can close it, and so you can actually open it and then maybe detach something from the group and then put it back and so on and so forth. So does that work here? I haven't tried that, but supposedly it has that feature built into it. So we'll see what happens. But let's just say we got a detail. We're going to add it to this guy later on, perhaps, or maybe we add it right now. So if I want to add it right now, I don't necessarily need to group this unless it has other objects, right? So if I had other primitive objects here on this and I need to group it all together, then so be it. That's what I would do. You can add those primitives to it later on as well, so we'll be okay. Otherwise, you can Alt D and just use it as a link duplicate. Okay, so link duplicates share mesh data. And this is where the grouping takes off because you can actually share mesh data, right? And so if I was to actually just pull this in here and start using it, it'd be fine. I'm not doing that just yet though. Instead, you could try to group this by itself where there's nothing else with it. So you can add elements to it later on. So you can hit Control G to create a group. Boom. And as you can see, it's going to be placed with this object and it goes to the origin point. If you open this little panel, you can see it's using its median point, right? Well, it's using its origin point or median point, whatever. But this one is going to do a little bit different. And this is where things get tricky. So if I come back over here and we want this to be the origin point down here, not say this one up here or something. This one, we hit Control G, and what it's going to do is it's going to use the median point, and that's why we get that little crosshair in the middle there. That's the median point. We want to use the active object. So we shift select that one last. It should be highlighted, and we can use it as the active object. And now that will be our pivot point. Okay, so what's really going on here when we hit Control G is it's creating a link duplicate of sorts in this area. And this is why it's creating a collection instance, basically. And so this is why we get these little crosshairs, is because it's a collection instance. So let me give you another example. Maybe whenever you create a series of objects, say we got all these together, okay, and we wanted to sort of group these together. Usually you would use collections. We hit M, new collection. We say our new object, right? And boom, there we go. So it's in a collection. It's going to behave like this. And this is what's frustrating about this, because if you select that, it's not a group. It's in a collection. You can right click a collection and select objects. Sure. But it's a little frustrating to use. If I hit Shift A and I create a collection instance, you'll see all of our collections are down here. So our new object, we can create a collection instance. And now you'll see we get a crosshair. Okay. But it's way over here because collection instances, the origin point is the scene center over here. Right. So you can see that doesn't move, that little crosshair. I have to actually move this object physically back to the scene center to get that origin point to line up. This is what makes collection instances sometimes very troublesome, because it's all misaligned. It has to be all your props or details or modular pieces would have to be created in the scene center. Now, this add-on does this, but it does it behind the scenes. And what's going on is that up here in the top right, it's created a new scene for you. So I don't know if you ever played around with scenes in Blender before, but very useful sometimes. And in our case, it creates a separate scene where our actual objects are going to be stored at, basically. Okay. And so these right here, you can see it's still just like what we had originally. If I hide the other elements there, you see that little cylinder pops up in the middle there too, right? So if I go back to the regular, as they call it, the library scene, if I go back to the regular scene, we're back where we were, which is great. So this is actually something of a collection instance right now, is all I was trying to point out here. It creates it's a way of creating like nested prefabs, if you would. So this is great because now in this scene, we know our object's stored over here, but we are in our scene that we're working in maybe. This was all lined up to the grid, hopefully. I think I got it all lined up. I should be able to snap this out onto the grid now. It's using that same origin point. I had it lined up to the grid, so I should be able to start pulling things like this out anyway. All right, so a lot of times modular kit pieces, it's very useful if you rotate things as opposed to invert the scaling. But we'll do the rotation for some of these, and then I'll try to invert the scaling here by mirroring one of them. Okay, so if I hit Shift D and duplicate this and right click, Control M, middle mouse click, or XYZ, I can flip this over. Right? And so if this is flipped over here, you can see it inverts the scale. Okay. So if I took an object like this and I Shift D and duplicate it, and I want to snap to the face, align rotation to target, and use center again, and I hold Control. In our case, it's working, but on certain things, it will actually flip the other way because of this scaling. All right. So it doesn't always do it, but I believe in edit mode or something. There's times it'll happen. So you want to be careful with your scaling and mirroring when you have negative values. Typically is what's going to happen here. But in a lot of level design for games, this is pretty common to flip things around as well. So, and it doesn't mess up the normals necessarily. Anyway, so you can see I laid this little section out here. We're just going to reuse this piece in the middle here. Just some kind of piece we're going to have repeat all the way down the scene here. We could have put a floor in here as well. So we could hurry and make another modular piece perhaps, where there's just a little floor section. Let's do that. Let's just do a cube. I want to line it up in the scene real quick. We don't have to keep it over here necessarily, but just want to get it lined up. I'm not using grid snapping. Oh yeah, I am. Sorry, I switched it to it. You don't always have to grid snap everything. You can sometimes vertex snap things too, guys. Make modular pieces, but let's just say I'm doing this number. I go does align rotation to target and do that. So it's a little bit frustrating. I'm gonna line this up right around there. I'm gonna delete this for a second. Just do a plane, I guess. I'm gonna inset and hold control and hit B. Okay, and that's all I'm doing for that. Origin point, we're not gonna worry about too much right now. I just want to get this placed here as another piece, for example. We could actually make this one bigger even if we wanted to, or we could keep it small like this. Really up to us. We could actually make two pieces maybe. Let's take one over here. Maybe one's going to be a variation. We can make it bigger, right? We got a smaller one, 2 meters and 4 meters. We could group this one. We can group this one. So Control G, right? And you can see what's happening now. So with this going like this, we should be able to go back to the base, the library here. We'll have all these collections going. And what we're looking for is like, which one is this? This is like floor, we'll say floor 4 meter. Okay. And then this one was the floor 2 meter. All right. And you can see one's in the scene center and one is not. So this one here, we can still work on over here. And we can move it like so and get it lined up so that it's centered up now. All right. But when we go back to our regular scene, I know it's a little bit convoluted right now. You don't have to go to that scene like that. You can just hit the tab key to go into basically like when you're in object mode, you hit tab, usually it goes into edit mode. But when it's a collection instance, it takes you to that scene and lets you work on just that asset, and it isolates it too. So we could have done that over here like this. So for example, if this pivot point is not the way we want it, we could just move it here now after hitting tab. You go to the empty space, make sure nothing's selected and hit tab again. It goes back to this one over here. Okay, so you can get in and you can get out basically. So for example, in, out, and that's the group system, right? That's pretty much what it's going to be doing. Want that centered up for this particular one. You don't necessarily have to do that. You could actually put it in a corner or something like that as well. As long as you don't change it later on, you should be good. Sometimes you'll spiral out of control. Just hit tilde key, view selected, and tilde key is squiggly line at the top left. All right. Anyways, so we got these going. I just want to lay them out in here real quick and just start working them down this way. Okay. And then maybe we do it a little bit offset, like maybe we do this one a couple times in here as well. Because this is 2, that's a 4. Just hold Alt while orbiting or Alt middle click and gesture. You can get into those views real fast. But basically you can see where that kind of does a number like that. Okay, so this is where the fun begins because there's a lot of stuff we can do with this. Okay. We have a couple of objects. We'll take one of these and duplicate it over here as well. I like to just lay them out like this so I know what I'm working with. And so a lot of times I would build a scene, and then off to the side of the scene, I would have all my little modular groups or assets. And that's how it would typically occur. Okay. Um, in our case, it doesn't behave. This is how I would have done it like Max maybe. But in our case, these objects are in that other scene, but I just don't like toggling to it all the time. So um, just creating like a little spread here of the different parts and pieces and components could be useful. But one of the things that you can't normally do with a collection instance is it has to be at the scene center. So you wouldn't be able to work on this normally, right? Now we can. The only thing is it isolates it from the other view. Whereas in Max, this would actually let you edit this once you open the group. You could edit it right here in Spot. So you'll be able to snap to other elements perhaps, but you can't do that in Blender, unfortunately, because it doesn't have a real grouping system. It just has collection instances. And this is where we end up, but it's still better than nothing. Okay. Because doing this all with collection instances and going back and forth between collections is really a pain, in my opinion. So this add-on saves a lot of trouble with that. It's going to just give you this ability to build out a little section like this. And on top of that, you could take this whole group and you can group it again, but let's group it to maybe this floor tile. Is it on the grid? Yeah. Okay. I'd rather have one kind of at the end here, but maybe we do that. Maybe we want to do that. So maybe we can get into, yeah, I don't think if I go into edit mode and I select here and shift S cursor to selected, I don't think it works like this, but maybe it does. Yeah. See, it does that in the other scene. Okay. So it's a little confusing. It does it in the other scene. It doesn't do it over here. So if I wanted to place something on the grid over here and I want to put the 3D cursor here, this is actually something you can do. You can use the 3D cursor. So you shift right click. We have snapping on right now, right? Or we have snapping set to grid. So shift right click and drag and hold control. And you can set the 3D cursor this way. Now it's probably too high. So we alt click while orbiting. Now we can just go in here and we can G. Yeah, make sure we're on the grid here. We can shift right click and hold control and snap down there. So you got to do it twice. But you can use that 3D cursor that way. And this is where things get kind of cool because we can do the whole set. We can hit Control G again. But instead of using the active object, we're going to use the 3D cursor. And that's going to place our pivot point there. Okay. A little bit confusing maybe, but so basically our collection instance, our group, if we want to call them one or the other, I guess it's basically the same thing. But what it's doing is we place the origin point there. So now this can act like a very nice big modular piece perhaps, right? And so this is the idea of using nested assets in a group. You can make very complex things very fast. In our case, if we needed a longer hallway piece, you know, we don't have to go back into this and modify each one of these and do all kinds of nonsense. This object, right? Tab into it. We want to make it cooler looking. Maybe we can do a loop cut. Press E and F, Control R to loop cut EF. And now you can get in here. You can see this is okay-ish, but I can Alt E, through manifold, push that in a little bit. Maybe we want a little bar there or whatever. We can do that. It's not on this side. If our origin point was set correctly here, which hopefully it was, we can just symmetrize this if we want. So I'm going to move that back a little. So we can press A, mesh, symmetrize, and we'll do, in our case, negative Y to positive Y. You can always tell by the gizmo up here sometimes. Well, not always. This is the world gizmo. If you've rotated your object, it's going to use its local rotation. So in our case, if I hit Control period in object mode, you see Z's up and we're doing Y still. Okay. So local is like this. That's what's happening. It rotates too, right? So just keep that in mind. We'll turn that off. Actually, Control Z back. So you're going to symmetrize off that local is what's going to happen. So I'm going to do Y and see if I picked the right one first. There you go. So I guess a negative Y to a positive Y for that one. We got this guy down here. Maybe we split it with a loop cut. We bevel it. Maybe we come in here. We inset with I, inset again, hold control, push it down a little bit, do something like that. And then we can go really fancy with these things. You can also Alt Q between objects if you want, right? You hit K over here, press Y, and then what we want to do is A twice. And it should be, you can press S if you need to see it. It should be 90 degrees up. And then we can hit Y again, cut over. We can do that. We can Alt-E, extrude manifold, push it in a little bit. So we might get away with something like that as well. You might be able to do extrude manifold, just click and then hit G and X and maybe, oh, okay, no, it didn't work. I was wondering if that would work. That did not work. Okay. Alt-E, as you can see, Alt-E, extrude manifold, and hit X. We can do that one though. Okay. So basically we can get in here and we start detailing things. And this is where working with modular kits can be really, really good, because what you end up finding is that a lot of times you can do your blockouts and start doing a level inside of a game engine, and you can do nested prefab groups over there, right? So then you don't have as big of a problem with it when doing that, but you can certainly get in here and start making, I keep hitting the wrong key because I usually have that set as a shortcut. Usually inset I set to W. It's way faster. So you can extrude and inset right next to each other. So if you ever want to do that, you can do inset faces, you just change shortcut to W. It's fantastic. The only time you're going to go back and use eyes if you want to do individuals. So just keep that in mind, which I don't want to do right now. So, but I want to knock some of this in a little bit. You could take a center cut like that and bevel it out a lot of times, which actually not going to work here for this one. We'd actually have to fix this topo a little bit. So let's not do that then. We could do another loop cut maybe. Except we got some, what are we doing here? What is going on with this? Merge by distance? I got doubles or something going on, or just some bad ingons from that manifold extrusion maybe? That's probably what's going on. Sometimes that can happen. Like it shouldn't have done a loop cut through there anyways. It's a big ingon. You should be able to do a KCA, cut all the way through if you wanted to. Okay. And that's all I was trying to do to get this pushed in a little bit further so I could symmetrize like that. Come up here, I can inset, hold control, alt click there, inset again, hold control. You see, oh, maybe we should back that up off that border a little. We'll try it again. All right, inset, hold control a little, alt click, inset. There you go. So there's tons of ways of creating windows and all kinds of other fun stuff, but let's say that was a window, right? It would be something like that. I want it solid right now because I'm going to do some booleans here in a second with the manifold boolean solver. So, but basically you can see we can come in, we can start detailing, we can make all kinds of fun things happen here if we really wanted to. It's really, it's a really good overall process of working with groups. It's something that Blender desperately needs to add as a vanilla feature, but they haven't done it yet. So maybe we do a couple cuts into here. I'm going to inset, grab, Shift R, R. Quick way of doing that, inset and hold control, boom. So you can see where this is going to start going. We can start detailing it. We can do all kinds of fun stuff here. We can add more objects if we wanted as well. As long as we're in that other scene, okay? So like if we're in this group right here and we're working in it, and I create a cylinder, okay? It's going to go wherever it goes, but if I create a cylinder in here, I shrink it down and do whatever I want to do here, it'd be nice if you apply your scale after if you can and fix your origin points as needed. But we should be able to do things like this too. Okay. That auto smooth. All right. So now we tab out. You'll see all of this is updating. That's the power of groups, right? That's really what it is. It does let you do things like this. Now, the problem with this compared to other software is that we can't add modifiers to this. So, I mean, we can with what's available. I think Blender's going to add more modifiers to it at some point, hopefully. But the workaround for this, since it doesn't have that ability, has been to create a cube. Okay. And on this cube, you want to add a GeoNode modifier. You can create new if you want there, or you can just go to the GeoNode tab and geometry nodes. If you didn't do it this way, I'm going to exit it real quick. You just create new here. It's the same thing with the object selected. And so I want to bring this object onto this. So what I'm going to do is Shift A, do an input scene, and we can do an object info. We might even get away with a collection info as well. I think would work. Because you can see we have all these different collections now. But I'm not sure if it He's reading from the other scene. That's the thing. So I'm going to go with input object info for now. And I'm going to eye drop this big piece and watch what happens. Boom. Nothing. We have to hook up geometry to geometry here. Okay. Now it swaps it. Okay. So I don't know if you've seen how that exactly happened. Here's our origin point. Here's that. It swaps it. Okay. And what we can do, as you can see, we can't add, well, we can't add a modifier right now, but let's say we did a simple deform. Let's say we wanted to twist this whole thing. Okay. I'm going to try to twist it, and I add the twist, simple deform modifier, and I try to twist it up. It doesn't do nothing. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we have to make sure we have the GeoNode and make it active selected. We want to do a realize instances. Okay. We want to add realize instances, click it in here. And what it's going to do is it's going to make them, well, all real basically. And now we can twist this thing. Let's say we want to do some crazy stuff like this. This is where Blender spectacularly fails because it's just such a awkward way of working to go back and forth to do these kinds of things. Let's say I wanted to rotate it 90 degrees from the middle there. Yeah, it's a very strange process sometimes, but this is something that you could possibly do in other packages a little bit easier to some degree. But also, let me make sure this one's on the grid. Yeah, so if I rotate this object now 90 degrees, we can start creating modular spiral pieces. Okay, this is why I wanted to go through this whole process, because it's kind of crazy once you start really realizing what you can get away with here. But unfortunately, in order to use this as a bigger group piece, you know what we have to do then, and maybe we want to add modifiers to it as well. That means we got to create a cube. We have to create the GeoNode setup for that specific piece, and it just becomes a runaway train at that point. It's really frustrating after a little while, but it's still pretty cool that we can do this. So let's just say we do this. Is this going to repeat yet? No, it's not. I got to do another one, rotate it so that it matches. If I can see what I'm doing here. Pull it forward a second. And rotate it on Y. Somewhere over there, we can do it. There we go. I was hoping to get all this line back up with each other. I think I got it slightly missed a line. That's going to cause some problems, but yeah, it would have worked out really well if it just lined up perfect. Oh, I got it slightly rotated still. There it goes, because it was only 90 degrees. And then, of course, you know, we do that again. Wait, one. That went a little bit easier that time, huh? Maybe. I just wanted to get back to the point where it's back up and down. And let's say I wanted to turn this into that big modular piece. I should, in theory, be able to group this. So I'm going to try it. We're going to Control G real quick. Okay. So now when we tab into this one, we have to tab into this one to work on it. These are realized, so it should act like destructive mesh where the linking broke now. Okay. It should anyways. So if I went back and I modified the original, say wall, that's why you want to separate it maybe. Let's just say we extrude this section here. Okay. It shouldn't update on this other one. Make sure not selected a tab out. Okay. Shouldn't have updated it, but maybe it did. Oh, it did. Okay. All right. We got lucky then. I thought realizing the instances might have messed that process up, but it didn't. So that's good. And then now we got all this put together. It's in its own group. And once again, we want to use this as a piece that we can add modifiers to. There's no guarantee this is going to work. You can see the simple deform modifier doesn't even show up. So that means you create another cube. You got to set up a new GeoNode for it. Let's go to GeoNodes tab. It's confusing, right? It's a little runaway train here for you guys, but I just wanted to get to this point because I know some of you guys haven't seen this before. So we have this piece here. This is the object. You can actually drag this into your GeoNode a lot of times. Just do that. So that's the easy way of doing it. But it's a little confusing if you don't have the object's name necessarily, right? You can see, well, that one disappeared, so that might not be it. Oh, no, it is it. But see, the placement of this is way over here off the center, so this one is off the center base. This was moved back over here somewhere. This might work out better. And that's not even a guarantee. I think this is where things get really convoluted in Blender, I think. Okay, no, it's not that. It's just this origin point then. Okay. This origin point. This was a group. So you'd have to tab into it, I guess, and then move it. Okay. Something like that. It's really confusing. We'll use this one. So when you're doing snapping with groups of objects and you're using the grid, a lot of times you have to set grid snap to use active here. Okay. Occasionally in edit mode, you'll use active under pivot points as well. But anyways, I should be able to snap this right where I need it anyways. Hopefully it works out, right? And we'll see if this all works at the end of this process here. Should have updated the pivot point to something that makes sense, but it did not. All right, yeah. It's just a runaway train at this point. So here's the thing with this one, all right? Can I know? Oh, I was isolated. Eventually, we can try to work these things out. It's not as simple and straightforward as I would like it to be sometimes. Because nesting and using collections, it's a mess, right? And this is really where just using that group system, that group add-on, would probably work best for just very simple things. But sometimes this is a requirement. I wanted to merge these and shade them auto smooth and stuff. And also, it's helpful if you have things lining up with the same kind of grid patterns. They don't get all weird or awkward. Anyways, we're kind of there. I mean, I'm not going to worry about setting this up modularly for just a second. What I am going to worry about instead is that we have this setup going. We have this going, and I want to make sure I realize the instances. Okay. I can do the simple deform again if I needed to, but we're not doing simple deform. What we're going to do is we're going to use a Boolean. And so I'm just going to bring a cube over here. I'm just going to make it bigger. We'll do a little bit of modification to this so we can see what it's doing. This object, we can do Booleans with now if we've realized those instances. So we can do a Boolean. We can pick the cutter. Let's take the cutter and let's make it a wireframe real quick. All right. And now we pull it down. You can see it's working-ish, but not really. This is where we're using the exact solver. It's slow, first of all. It's very precise, but it's slow. And sometimes it just doesn't work out well because of how much stuff is going on here, basically. Float, surprisingly, works a little bit better. Okay. And this is where float used to be called fast, but it does work out pretty well. But even this has its own issues. And you can see we get some faces not showing up and whatnot. This is where the manifold solver comes into play. Manifold does a really good job. It's sort of like using exact, but also as fast as float. And it does deal with vertices and edges that are very close to each other much better and much more complex things anyway. So not guaranteed that it even works. As you can see, it's not working right now because it has to have a manifold mesh. Okay, whatever you're working on. In my case, I don't know what I've left open. Oh, the floor. Okay. But something I left open, and that's why that won't work. Let's just come over here real quick. And I'm going to add a solidify modifier to this, actually. We'll keep it simple. We'll just solidify it out. Okay. And maybe even thickness. All right. Tab back out of that one. We can get into this one, tab in, grab it, solidify. It has to be solid. That's why it's called manifold solid. You can't just leave it open-ended like that. I don't think I did anything else open-ended, so it should be working now, hopefully. There you go. And yes, it can create a mess too, just like any other Boolean. But I find that it works really well, typically speaking. So if you ever wanted to do these kinds of sections and cut them up like this and just do some really crazy geometry, this is where all the magic happens, in my opinion, is being able to create groups and then being able to use modifiers on groups and create nested groups, basically, or groups within groups. And you can see I can boolean or cut or duplicate that object, is the boolean's not going to take effect again. But maybe we subdivide it a bit. Maybe we want to create like a destroyed look to this. We could probably add, working on this in edit mode's a little bit complicated or confusing, but let's do proportional random maybe. We grab one face and hit Alt S, bring it up a little, and then we mouse wheel that bigger. And so random will give us some noise, basically, is what I was looking for. So yeah, I think you get the idea here at this point. You could totally make something that looked like it just slammed into this and cut a hole through it or something, right? Not really a big deal. Let's hide that because it's confusing to look at. Let's get rid of this grid floor too, because it just complicates it a bit. But yeah, now we can see what's going on here. This will still require cleanup possibly. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. Otherwise, you'll get Z fighting and other stuff going on with it. But this is kind of how you do sims for destructive buildings in games, where maybe you use something like cell fracture and you have it all animate, falling apart. You bake the animations, you bring them in the game engine, all that fun stuff. There's all kinds of different ways of creating effects and whatnot. But having, something like this and then having the ability to, make it more or less look like it blows up in the game engine and there's this big hole here now. That's where you start getting into the effects of things. And it's a pretty cool process overall. You can see moving this with the cutter not parented to it. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, and then you do something like that maybe. In our case, we might get away with Shift D in this and then doing an intersect. And that'll give us the piece in the middle too. So maybe we do this and then at some point we could try to convert it to a mesh. Possibly, or we could try to do like a cell fracture on this piece so it can all blow apart appropriately. But once again, you're probably going to have to clean it up. If you merge by distance, keep it at a very low threshold. You might get lucky with cleanup where you can do select interiors in edit mode. Make sure you're in face select all by trait. Interior faces. Sometimes that works. In this case, it's quite complicated, so it probably, it was going to fail to begin with, but there's a lot of interior faces in here and stuff like that. Do you always have to clean it up? No. Is it preferable? Sometimes, but if you're going to run more booleans on this, it might fail if it's too messy. So you might have to clean it up a little bit. And if this was already UV mapped for the most part, we'd have to work around the UVs if we don't want to redo them, basically, which isn't impossible though. And so you could actually, UV unwrap this and then it will transfer over to here is what's going to happen. As long as it's not collapsed down, we didn't convert it to a mesh. This one will work. This one would. So you might want to wait for that other step later on, but it's really not that hard to do once you get used to it. The only thing is it's hard to do in Blender because first, there was never a grouping system, right? The way you group is still using collection instances. So it requires that second scene to store the objects. And then ultimately, you have to do the weird GeoNodes workaround to actually use modifiers. We can't really update the pivot points all that well without going into that, the group itself. So there's a little bit of back and forth with this. Use it simple, guys. I know this is really cool looking, but the group system, trust me, use it as simple as possible for props, details, small modular pieces maybe, but don't. When you're starting to do this kind of stuff, I think going with GeoNodes might be the better way, in Blender at least. Okay? So that you want to kind of keep things making sense for yourself. If that means just organizing it all however you see fit and creating collection instances manually, do that, obviously. If you think the grouping system works better or this little add-on, do that, obviously. I think this add-on is really great for doing little modular pieces like this, personally. I think it's not bad at all. Once it starts getting to this level, it's a little bit more questionable because it's much harder to work with between all those different things, right? You can see it was a runaway train. But overall, hopefully, this was a 44-minute tutorial. But I went over quite a bit here that I don't usually dive into, because it can be a very complicated mess to create modular kits and creating structures that are meant to do things like this. You really have to have, have experience with it to some degree. Like learn to create these basic modular components, learn how to do some things like this, and then learn how to organize it from like start. So like when I'm building this piece, I'm thinking about building this piece. Okay. And then sometimes it's a little strange to get used to. Okay. It's like Inception almost. You got to learn how to twist, 90 degrees or 45 degrees and make everything fit back on the grid. Sure. You got to bend objects. Sure. There's certain objects you don't want to use modifiers like simple deform with, where you would actually go back. And that was the whole point of this little cylinder here. Because if I wanted to ever use that again later on this piece over here, obviously I would want to do my setup there. And I would eventually maybe group things like this into it as well. Okay. So maybe I have these just little, I don't know, cylinders on the outside here. Cool. So we can skip all that to some degree. And then later on, we can work on this piece, make it cooler or more interesting or whatever. And maybe make it some kind of antenna or something, I don't know. And then tab out of it, come back over here. We might even group all this together. So, all right. So the process can run. Keeping it simpler typically is better. One or two groups. Don't try to go too crazy, but yeah, we could definitely lay those out. And because if we had deformed these with this, they wouldn't look right. Okay. They would start looking all dilapidated, and it's just that's not what you want. You don't want that at all. Okay. So sometimes you got to construct things after grouping, and yeah, it's a runaway train, like I was saying, but it's definitely fun. And the more you play around with the idea, you can just create some really abstract, crazy 3D pieces for render, just to have a little bit of fun with it, just to kind of get used to using mirrors, arrays, grouping, making modular grid snapping pieces. It's just a lot of fun ultimately, because this doesn't stop here. For example, if I take this whole piece, I should, in theory at least, be able to. We'll get rid of this for a sec, maybe. I'll go ahead and do this, and I should be able to create a lattice around this too. Lattice deform selected. So we should be able to do that. Bump some of these up. I don't know if I want all of those though. One's this one? This one, the one I want. All right. So the lattice you take into edit mode, and now Shift A, by the way, in object mode when this is selected, lattice deform selected. Okay. That will let us go ahead and start working in this manner where like maybe we want the middle to inflate a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You have to Alt Z through it maybe. I don't think lattice you have to Alt Z, but now you can get some really unique kind of changes here going on, right? Maybe you want the middle to bend outwards a little or something. You know what I'm saying? This is the power of 3D that you've probably been missing in Blender, because it just doesn't exist here by default in vanilla Blender. Right. Well, I mean, it does, but it's complicated. Nobody explains it, and they don't show this kind of stuff. So in 3D Studio Max, it's kind of like a default feature. You hit Control G and put things together and add modifiers to it. You don't think about it too much over there. Over here, you got to kind of use an add-on. You got to go through the outliner. You got to create a separate scene. You got to do all this crazy stuff, just to keep it somewhat organized and usable. And it's a frustrating thing, right? This is something I've been wanting in Blender since I started using it. One of the most annoying aspects about it is that you just really, it feels like it limits you to a large degree anyways. So even something like this now, we can duplicate this, intersect it now. You can see it still matches. And later on, you just maybe duplicate it again, convert it to a mesh, and pull it out as static mesh, So should have that kind of going. It'd be nice if we snapped them more purposefully next to each other. But the process continues. You can do some really crazy things with these, right? Mirror things and mirror things. Bisect them, flip them if needed. Like, what is this going to be? I have no idea. No idea what that thing is, but it's cool looking. Some junk in space, maybe. Can we clean it up and make it happen? That's the hard part, right? Trying to figure out if you can clean it up. But overall, pretty neat process. Yeah, play around with it. You can do some cool VFX stuff like this for sure. Just enjoy the process, all right? So with all that out of the way, you enjoyed the video, I'll check you guys out in the next one. All right. Take care.